I have with me Luke Goetting, who is he runs a presentation agency in Austin, Texas called Puffington Presentations. And his agency works for companies like Dell, IBM, and many more. To be very honest with you, Luke was the person that I started following after the pandemic last year because he was one of the first people who started pushing so hard on how we can make our virtual meetings more impactful. So I have him here with me. Hi, Luke.
Hey, Eva.
Hi, how are you? How have
Excited?
you been doing?
I'm doing well. It's bright and early here in the central part of the United States. I'm coming in from Austin, Texas, so it's a lovely 4 a.m. Morning so far. But I feel kind of privileged because I obviously can't travel to Europe right now, so I feel like this is the next best experience.
Absolutely, I fully agree. I hope you have your coffee and you look
Coffee.
fantastic, as I already told you.
The come and take it Texan mug here from Yeti.
Oh, okay, that's a nice one for all of the people that have joined from the US because we have some early birds from there. Thanks a lot for this dedication. And look, now I think our audience would want to get your thoughts and your tips on how we can maximize our virtual presentations. So the
Perfect.
stage is
Well,
yours.
again, yeah, terrific. I'm excited to be joining everyone. It's always a privilege to be speaking to audiences pretty much globally, and that's been one of the really fun opportunities that this bizarre pandemic situation has allowed for. So, yeah, I want to talk today. It's been over a year for most of us dealing with almost exclusively virtual meetings. And so I want to share strategies and ideas today to help you take those from, all right or passable to really engaging, exciting experiences. So with that said, let's dive in as Eva mentioned. We're going to talk about the virtual revolution this morning. I want to make it clear that we have some great resources available for you as well at the end of today's session. So I have a cheat sheet as well as a full replay of the full session. So we may not even be able to cover everything that I could possibly cover. Imagine that today. And so I'll have a replay available. We'll share those links at the end of today's session. And if you want to recap anything or if you want to have a reminder, you can immediately pounce on those resources. Okay, so in the summer of 2013, I quit my job to focus on creating iPad sales presentations for the electronic security industry. I felt pretty confident in this venture. I had spent the previous 4 years traveling all around the US, meeting with big strategic companies in that space, and I had seen the trend of companies buying up iPads and giving them to their sales teams. So in many ways, I was counting on leveraging the face-to-face relationships I had developed over those years to make my venture successful. So I hustled for 6 months. I got published in industry newspapers, featured webinars, and after all that time, I made $500 and was out of money and was starting to look for a new job. But right at the end of the year, I submitted one of my presentations for the best business for the Prezi Awards and ended up winning the Best Business Prezi of the Year award. And overnight, that changed everything for me. I went from talking to people that I'd previously met and in industries that really the only industry that I had ever known to getting leads from people and companies all around the country, all around the world in some cases, in industries that I had never even heard of. And most importantly, they hired me and they actually gave me money so I could continue doing my consulting. So I kind of accidentally discovered that if I had the credibility and the market fit, people would hire me even without having met me face to face. And so it's been a really fun journey for me. It's been 8 years and it's gone from me freelancing to a presentation agency. We've worked at really exciting events like CES, South by Southwest, TEDx Talks, and many more. And in many situations, we have never met our clients face to face or communicating entirely virtually. So kind of with that personal journey of mine, I went from really thinking that I had to have met these people in person to having very successful, very profitable partnerships that were entirely virtual, entirely digital communications. But at the same time, I learned that when you are communicating through these virtual channels, there's so much you can do to improve the experience, to create more engaging experiences, to improve the quality of the interactions. And so that's what I want to talk about today. How do we maximize our impact in a virtual setting? So that was my personal journey from the summer of 2013 to the start of last year. And then the pandemic happened. And early on in my conversations, one of the common themes with our clients, with our partners, was this idea that, hey, this is all just a temporary inconvenience. And while, of course, we hope COVID is as temporary as possible, it's very exciting that we have vaccines rolling out now, hopefully be able to travel again in the near future. I did like to stress that in the context of remote work, this is a trend that's been accelerating for a long time, and this will continue to be a presence in our life post-pandemic. So some statistics here in the US, this was a study from pre-pandemic, January of 2020, and already they were finding that roughly 4 out of 5 people were remote working some of the time, about 58 or roughly 3 out of 5 once a month, and then 36% once a week. And that last number, as compared to just 1 decade prior, represents over 400% increase. So this was a trend that was already rapidly accelerating. I like to encourage people to think of it really just as a slider scale. On one end we have in-person meetings, and on the other end we have remote meetings. And many of us were doing a larger percentage of our meetings in person before. And now we're in this very bizarre situation where the majority of our meetings, almost all of our meetings, are remote. But I ultimately believe we will settle in post-pandemic somewhere in between, but shifted much further to remote meetings than ever before. So again, these are going to be skills that are going to go well beyond the next 3 months, 6 months. These are going to be career-long skills. There's all kinds of resources, there's all kinds of studies. I'm sure you've seen some of these reports that say so many companies are shifting what they thought were going to be just temporary remote positions to full-time remote positions. That's going to really change the competitive landscape out there. And so I'm really curious to hear from all of y'all. Eva, if you don't mind queuing up our first poll here, how often did you participate in online meetings before COVID? Was it most of the time? Was it not often? Somewhere in between? Yeah, I would love to hear from all of y'all. I'd like to get a sense of where my audience is coming from. So I will I'll let you start responding in on that one. And Eva, I'm curious from your experience, where were you coming from? Was this something that you were doing much of beforehand?
So yes, I've just to give our audience a hint, the polls are right next to the Q&A section, so you can go ahead and vote in the poll that we've already opened. Okay, results are starting to come in. From my perspective, excellent. I presented online most of the time, even before the pandemic. So now
wow.
This one has already increased, but we actually see some people, 31% of people say that they presented most of the time, 25 say it was half the time, and almost 50% say not too often.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, we've got some relatively even distribution there between the different groups. So that's really exciting, and I appreciate y'all weighing in. It's always a good experience to get a sense of where people are coming from. And yes, I do mix in some y'alls from time to time. Those are my Texan slang going on there. So if you are buying into my premise that this is going to be a career-long skill set, well, what are we up against? Well, before the pandemic started, one of the things I was spending a lot of time talking about was people's devices, right? Their cell phones, their tablets, their laptops. How do you get your colleagues to put down their phones in meetings? How do you get them off their phone without being a jerk, right? Those are the things we were thinking about. And now we have this ironic challenge where we're asking people to experience these meetings on those same devices that we were formerly trying to get them to put down. So that's a major challenge. I probably don't also have to tell you about just remote working from home presents a series of challenges in itself. Like, I don't think this is something we had to worry about in a conference room setting very often. Love the face palm at the end there. I think now at this point, a year into this, I think we all have our own personal stories of situations like that. So I have this second poll, Eva, if you wouldn't mind queuing that up. I'm really curious to hear from you. How do you feel the quality of your meetings has changed since shifting to remote working? Has it been worse? Has it gotten better? Is it somewhere in between? I'm really curious to hear how you feel this whole situation has rolled out for you and what your meetings have turned out to be. And I appreciate that quality is a bit of a subjective term, but go ahead and weigh in on this, and we'll see what you say. Evo, yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think about this one here?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We have already some results coming in. I see that people are also writing in the chat. We would see it much better if you go to the polls and just vote. About 44% of people say that the quality of their meetings actually stayed about the same, which is interesting. Oh, now it changed. 52% say it's about the same. 22% say it got better, and 24% say it got actually
Interesting.
worse.
Okay, so again, somewhat evenly distributed, but to me, what's exciting, I'm not sure I have all those numbers exactly right, but it sounded like 70 to 80% of people were saying at least about the same or better, which to me is really exciting. And to me, the reason this is so important is because a lot of us, when I was doing this session 6 months ago, 9 months ago, worse was by far the most popular response. And so it seems like people have recognized that the quality has gotten better, they've gotten more comfortable, and this is now the opportunity to think about the next stages, right? If we're about the same, even perhaps a bit better, now we can really focus on these strategies that I want to share today. So we're going to talk about 3 sections today. Plan presence, which is all about how do we improve our on-camera presence. Dynamic content, which is all about what do we share during our meetings, and interactive broadcast, which is about how do we package our presence and our content and stream it in a way that's interactive, that's engaging, and that takes advantage of the meeting technology available to us. So pay attention, y'all. You are going to vote on which sections we cover today. I'm going to prioritize whatever you want to talk about. So I'm going to give you a quick preview, and then we're going to go to a vote to determine which of these we're going to cover. So in plan presence, we're going to talk about how do we get back to some of the best practices that we used to do in person versus this sort of hunched over laptop situation that we oftentimes see. Dynamic content, we'll talk about messaging. How do we craft really engaging, really inspiring narratives for our meetings, for our events? We'll also talk about conversational presentations, which is instead of having just an A to Z linear presentation, why not have one that is actually adaptable, modular, where we can change the content we cover based on the audience's interests. In interactive broadcast, we'll talk about the meeting technology, things like this spotlight remote that I'm using, things like the virtual webcam software I'm using right now to create this custom experience, custom view for you, and then audience participation, polls, chat, interactivity icons. So those are the 3 sections. Eva, if you don't mind queuing up that poll, those are opportunities for us to talk about really any of this virtual revolution content. So go ahead and weigh in, and whatever you vote for, that's going to be the first section we cover. And then we'll also, once we complete that section, have you vote again, and you'll get the opportunity to really tell me what we want to prioritize today. So yeah, Eva, if you want to do any lobbying for a certain section, this is your this is your opportunity. If not, yeah, just curious to hear what people are thinking when it comes to this poll.
Yeah, so basically most of the people are interested in dynamic content.
Great.
50% of the people, though it changes a bit now. Interactive broadcasts is also, it's also getting quite interesting, but still dynamic content is the headliner here. It's the winner.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thanks for weighing in, everyone. What I wanted to show you is if you look on this presentation, this little white hand represents a link. So I can click on any one of these sections, and because you chose dynamic content, that's going to be the first one we cover today. I am going to take a question or 2 at the end of this section. So be aware of that. If you've got anything, feel free to throw it in the chat. And then if we have more time at the end, we can go through a few more questions. So dynamic content. What I like to talk about here is this idea of what is a meeting? Well, I like to key in on this idea of discussion. The premise being that there's information being exchanged between meeting attendees. But a lot of times you get a couple of different types of meetings. You get one that's very one way, where it's just a leader and he or she is just kind of sharing everything that he or she knows, and the attendees just sit quietly and listen. You also have sort of open-ended meetings where it's kind of like a panel, or just where people randomly ask questions, and that can be really useful, but it can also be really fragmented, sort semi-random. And so, as you may have inferred, I like to really aim for this middle ground to maximize that productive info exchange. So how do we do that? Well, hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to eat. I know we've got people from all kinds of different time zones, but I'm going to use a food analogy. A buffet versus a fine dining experience. At a buffet, all the food is pre-prepared, the order is predetermined, and as an attendee, you just kind of go through and grab a bite of everything, right? And I know many of us haven't been fine dining in a while, but if you think back to the good old days, which are hopefully coming up again soon, they ask you, have you dined with us before? So they get some context. They share some specials with you as a preview, and then ultimately you are given a menu from which you make a selection. And so it's a very different experience versus a buffet. And this might seem somewhat intuitive that we would want to provide that fine dining experience for our attendees, but this is something we get pushback on all the time. A lot of times executives, they just want to make their prepared remarks and get off stage or get out of the meeting. But we really have to be willing to allow our audience to participate to make the most impact and best experiences info exchange as possible. So I want to share some strategies for doing that. We're going to talk about messaging, modular content, and commitments within this section. So on messaging, one of the most important things to do from the outset is establish context. You get meeting attendees from all kinds of different experience levels, and so sharing a brief history, some trends affecting your company or your industry, and your company's positioning in the overall marketplace can go a long way to getting everyone on the same page before you continue with your additional remarks. So establish context from the outset. Startups use this all the time, this trick of analogies, right? Rather than me giving a lengthy description, I could say, well, we're the Uber of moving. And so right away, I get an idea that it's probably app-based. It's probably peer-to-peer. I probably click on the app and it makes connections with people, and hopefully they come and help me move. So that can really help explain things quickly to people. So the second element here is storytelling. I know this is something that people have been talking about for a long time, but I really give a lot of credit to the TED Talks for reminding us the power of stories as compared to kind of the traditional lecture format. And so one of the best storytelling structures and most popular is called the hero's journey. It's used in all kinds of Hollywood movies, books, TED Talks. And I'm going to give a very simplified version of this here, but if this is something that interests you, definitely look more into it. It's a really powerful structure. So again, simplified edition, but more or less you have a hero, and he or she has a call to adventure, and they travel from their known world to their unknown world. And along the way, they pick up a helper, a mentor, and they run into some significant challenge, which they overcome, and eventually make their way all the way back to their known world as sort of a master of both of those worlds now. So again, really simplified edition, but check it out. It's the storytelling structure that's used in your most popular, some of your favorite stories, whether it's a movie or a book. Another research I like to reference is this research study they did where they analyzed the brainwaves from the audience and the speaker. And they found that those brainwaves were most synchronized when the speaker was telling a story. So if you really want your audience to experience something with you, storytelling is by far the best way to do it. So where do you want to use, well, actually, when I'm talking to business audiences, which I think a lot of our audience here is from the professional environment, a lot of times people get a little panicked. Like, where do I pull all these stories from? Well, don't worry. You don't have to dig into your childhood. You can pull them from everyday things like client success stories or examples that you're doing internally, industry events. These are things that you do on a daily basis that can make for great content for stories. Use them at your intro, use them at your conclusion, and to reinforce any main points you have. And here's one little quick tip. I mentioned you don't have to pull from your childhood, but if you have a picture of you as a baby, it's almost always good for a smile or a laugh from the audience. Indeed, that is baby Luke here in this picture. My only regret is that I couldn't tell him the value of toilet paper in the spring of 2020. Last year, it was almost impossible here in the U.S. to get toilet paper for a series of a few weeks. So, man, that could have really paid dividends there. Third thing, inspire with vision. So where are things headed? What's the best case scenario? Why are we well positioned to lead? These are kind of the rah-rah things that we coach executives on when they're giving inspiring keynotes. This really pairs with that context setting. Context is kind of looking backward, and then vision is looking forward. So those are really important elements. So combining that context, the storytelling, and the vision really make for a powerful narrative. Now, switching gears to content a little bit, I want to talk about modular content. This is the idea of having something that's adaptable to your meetings. A lot of times I ask companies for presentations or meetings that they do regularly, like a training, how much do you customize this for every different situation? And they say, oh, of course we customize it. But when I really peel back the layers, they might change out a logo or change some words. But ultimately, it's kind of a Mad Libs or a lip service. They really are still giving the same presentation with minor changes. So what if we could actually personalize in real time based on who shows up and based on how the meeting unfolds? Well, here's the really traditional presentation structure. This is often referred to as tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Now, if you listen carefully there, that is a lot of us telling our audience what to do. So I like to change that dynamic. I like to flip that over to a conversational style where there's a brief intro, but very quickly on, I introduce the element of choice to my audience. I preview to them what we can discuss, and then they tell me what they're most interested in, just like y'all did for this dynamic content section. To take it even further, I like to get away from calling it A, B, or C. Let's just call it cat, dog, rabbit, because it's order agnostic, right? We can go any direction that the audience wants to. This relates back to that idea of a menu. We're not just saying, here's all the ingredients in the kitchen. What do you want? We're giving them some strategic options that we've still prepared. We still have a plan for. That's how you can find that balance between totally open-ended but also prepared remarks there. And this is really how normal conversations work anyway. So I want to share an example with y'all of how this could look in a business, kind of a business presentation. This is a presentation that my company developed for Oldcastle, the mega construction firm. And you'll see in the first few slides, pretty typical content, introducing the team, speaking with them today, some pretty basic information about that company. You got some elements to kind of personalize to whomever you're talking to. But very early on, we would come to a slide like this, where there are different options based that I can ask my audience. I call this a pivot point. So I can ask the audience, what do you care the most about? And if it's really this unmatched expertise here, I can click on that and jump to that part of the presentation. And once I land there, I can just start to go through the content in a linear way. But if the topic changes, or we want to discuss something else, I've got a menu on this presentation. At the top right here, I can click on it, and I can go to any part of this presentation very easily. So if we want to talk about the different types of glass that my company offers, I can jump into that glass section. Even from there, I can dive deeper into perhaps insulating glass and talk about a really neat example from there. So there's so much modularity that I can do with this presentation. I'm never just locked into going next slide, next slide. I can really adapt the way our conversations do. All right, flipping back to the main script here. I also like to emphasize that this does not require slides. So I'm going to zoom in so y'all can see this a little bit better. This is from a company called VanillaSoft. And what they did is they mapped out the way that their conversations unfold during a call. So there's no slides involved whatsoever, but they can say, if you get a positive response, this is what you should say. If you have a negative response, this is what you should say. And so this is something that people tend to develop over time. But if you as an organization strategize the way your important trainings or conversations are going to go, sales meetings beforehand, that can go a long way to get everyone aligned. It also makes it much easier for new people to join your organization and not take years to have to kind of build that experience on their own. So the benefits here, you have that custom experience, you get the buy-in. If you are using slides, you can get away from having 20 different versions of your presentation. It also takes away some of the risk from me as the presenter. I didn't know what the Present to Succeed audience would care the most about this morning, but y'all just told me you wanted to talk about dynamic content, and so that's what we're doing right now. It takes that risk off of me assuming to know what you want. It's great for sales. It's great for trainings and onboardings, all hands meetings, really any type of interactive presentation. And just so y'all can see, I know this is small here, but this is kind of how we mapped out that old Castle presentation in the background. So it's kind of like building a website. You're planning out the branching, the way it's going to unfold, and then we just build a menu to easily click through to the different parts there. All right, third things, commitments. I have that light bulb there. It's kind of to me reflective of this idea that we all start out planning our presentation, our meetings to be as great as possible. We know why most meetings are terrible. Ours is going to be amazing. But along the way, we get other demands for our time, and sometimes things just fall flat. So what are some of the basics that we need to cover every time that we sometimes forget? Well, first of all, access to slides, or can I see a replay? That's almost always the first question from the audience. So if you can just address that up front, that can go a long way. Where can I learn more now? Y'all are doing back-to-back-to-back sessions today, checking out all the amazing speakers that this conference has to offer. So if I wait to follow up with you, a week later, chances are your priorities have shifted, you've moved on to the next thing. So we're going to provide you resources at the end of today's session. If you want to dive into it while I have your attention, that is the best time to do it. And also follow up on commitments. A lot of times people will make promises during a meeting. Hey, I'll introduce you to him or her, or why don't you come on my podcast? And those are great opportunities. And so many people never go back and look at their notes, and they never respond and say, oh yeah, that would be great. Can you actually do that after the meeting? And so I like to make time either at the end of my workday or the next morning, and just make sure to follow up on all the commitments either I've made or that someone has made to me. So with that said, that is the dynamic content section there. Really appreciate y'all checking that out. And we'll love to take a couple questions here from the audience. So I'm going to throw it back to Eva. What did y'all think? Weigh in on the chat about that section. If you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss a few now.
Yes, so in terms of questions, an interesting one I think is, do you typically, so when you do online meetings, do you typically engage also an assistant to support you in questions, chat, posts?
Great question. My favorite thing is what you're doing right now is to have a co-host, right? It's so useful. Not only does it create a little bit of a kind of two-way banter, right? It's not just me talking the whole time, but also it allows for that partner to keep an eye on those types of things. It is almost impossible to be fully engaged giving a talk, making remarks, but also monitoring the chat and also managing polls. So if you can tag team that with one of your coworkers, a colleague, a partner, it really goes a long way to helping you stay focused on what you're trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree on that. So whenever I need to do it, I always try to find someone who can help me with that part. I think what people are also struggling with a bit when it comes to online presentations and sharing content, because what you shared now is that the idea is to have a more of a conversation with your, whether it will be clients or people on the other end, and what you do with the posts. I already see that in the chat, people are super excited and liking the fact that you're engaging them and they are part of your talk. But how do you deal with brainstorming and whiteboarding? Because this is typically what you can do when you are in a meeting or when you are presenting in person.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's obviously a few different ways you can approach that. There's a lot of technology that you can do, but like in Zoom, in WebEx, you could actually just annotate, bring up a white slide or a white background. You can actually just create your own little landscape where you can annotate directly on screen. That's pretty handy. One little trick that I like to use is if you used to be someone who really liked to write things out on a notepad or to draw things out on a whiteboard, I'll just set up a second webcam. I'll show y'all right now. Second webcam, we'll get that queued up. And what I'll do there, it takes a second to get loaded here. So I like to just have another webcam, and here's where I could have my whiteboard, or here's where I could write something out on a notepad for y'all. kind of scribble some remarks. And that way I don't have to deal with my primary webcam, and then I can just flip back. I don't have to be moving that around. So you can kind of create multiple setups that you can adapt to any type of meeting where you can still be kind of tactile like that. So if you have a webcam laying around, plug it into your machine and you can actually just switch between them during meetings.
Yeah, that was a really cool one. I don't know if you were expecting that question, but it was a great tune into the question. All right, so off to you now.
Perfect.
I think we can continue with the next part.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and load that fourth poll there, Eva?
Sure.
And we'll just see. So obviously we just covered dynamic content, everyone. And I'll bring my slideshow up so y'all can see that again. We just covered dynamic content. So unless you want an encore presentation, go ahead and choose from either planned presence or interactive broadcasts, and that'll be the next section that we dive into. So I know we're just getting that loaded up. Cool.
Yep, so it's loaded up. Everyone can go into the poll section right between the chat and the Q&A, and let's see what people are going to say. So, it's currently 50-50 on planned presence and interactive broadcasting. Let's give it just a minute more.
It's getting really intense here.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes when that happens, the co-host has to be the deciding vote. So that's a lot of pressure, Eva.
Yeah. Oh, but we have a winner, so it would be interactive broadcasting.
All right, perfect. Well, again, thanks to y'all for weighing in. I love this section. I think this will be a fun one. And as a reminder, if you did vote for planned presence and we don't have time to cover it today, don't worry. We're going to share that link at the end of today's session, and you can check out the full 1-hour edition of this talk. So interactive broadcasts. I think we all took for granted a bit the conference room setting and having that captive audience. And now, of course, we've got, Nerf guns flying around. We've got cats and dogs jumping on screen. There's a lot going on to keep people's attention. One also distracting thing is we're all on our work computers for the most part. So, our chat, our emails, our projects, they're all sitting there right behind our webinar window. So if someone just clicks minimize, it's all just sitting there, and that's a lot of pressure. But it's not all doom and gloom. We do have the digital world at our fingertips. So anything we can creatively leverage on our machines, we can bring into our meeting environments. I'm a big advocate for going forward, because we've all been a year into virtual meetings. Going forward, the ones that really are going to stand out to people as memorable, it's not going to be enough to have a good on-camera presence. It's not going to be enough to have pretty good content. The ones that are going to really stick out to people are going to be the ones that take advantage of the stream that's available and really leverage the meeting tech in an exciting way. So we're going to talk about 3 things: presenter to producer, audience participation, and backstage. So if you think back to in-person meetings, one of the things that strikes me is how little control I often had. I'd just show up and I'd maybe just be, there's audiences already seated, and I would just have to connect wherever the AV connections were, and I'd have to deal with whatever room basically I was placed in, especially if I was doing an off-site talk. And so what's neat about the virtual experience is we have full control within the broadcast itself. Of course, we can't control what's happening in someone's home office, but within the broadcast, we do have that control, and that's really powerful. So this is an opportunity, but it's also a bit of a challenge. And I have a quick little clip I want to share with y'all that kind of reinforces that. So let me see if I can get this to work. I'm going to go to a full screen on this and pump up my volume a little bit. And this will be a fun little one.
News Force Tom, or call us at 1-800-GO-NEWS. We'll take your calls and comments, but first we go to our panel of experts. Consuelo O'Shea and Wayne Hollister, welcome to News Force.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be here, Carl.
Question of the day: President, fish or cut bait? Wayne, you have 2 seconds. Go.
Well, there are really 2 issues at stake here. Fish. You should fish.
Consuelo,
I cut bait.
back to you, Carl. News Force.
Let's take a call, but first, let's see a picture of the Terminator robot. That's cool. That is coming to you live from News Force.
Perfect. So This is a hilarious skit. If you want to check out the full one, just search News Force SNL, and it goes on for minutes and minutes, and all these graphics keep appearing on screen. But the reason I show that is because this is truly a challenge and also an opportunity. We are broadcasters, essentially, and so we have to think that way. Cable networks for years have used all the like ticker tape at the bottom and all the on-screen graphics to try to keep people's attention because it is such a challenge. Let me turn down my volume so I don't blow up my speakers here, and we'll kind of move forward. Now, before you get too overwhelmed, there are some very powerful settings with every webinar platform. So you don't have to be a technical wizard to still use it very effectively. So first of all, is your webcam on or off? Is your screen share on or off? And then a combination of those. Those are available on practically anything. They're relatively easy, but they can be really powerful. The biggest opportunity I see is when people are screen sharing, they tend to just leave it on the entire time. And it can be really powerful to switch back to video or to go to full screen. In fact, let me bring my video up. So just switching from your slideshow back to a video only view, it can make a big impact. Right? You can see me a little better, you can see my gestures, and then when I want to bring my attention back to my slides or my screen share, I can do that and just flip between those. So don't forget when you're screen sharing that it can be powerful. In many softwares, it creates like an actual reset, kind of jumbles the screen a little bit when you go video only. And so that can be a really powerful technique in itself. All right. If you are in Zoom, I feel like we've all had to become Zoom power users this last year. You can hide your own self view. That way, if you're getting distracted by seeing your face, seeing your background, seeing your hair, you can just turn that off and the audience can still see you. One thing that's really neat is in the first few minutes of any virtual meeting, I like to use this idea of an intro commercial, right? It's kind of dead time. People are getting logged in and you're just waiting around. And so what you can do is just set up a slideshow that shows cool things that your client success stories or awards or any announcements you have. You don't have to say anything. You can just start screen sharing and just let that play as people log in. It's a great way to kind of have a little intro commercial or a virtual lobby. Okay, the Logitech Spotlight Remote. This is one of my favorite presentation tools. This is what I've been using to create this on-screen spotlight effect here. So let me show y'all what this looks like. This is the spotlight, and it's got this forward and backward button, and then it has this top indicator button here. And that top button is what, when I hold it down, that's what's allowing me to do that spotlight effect. And then what's also cool is if I double click on it, I can do a zoom effect. So I can show, highlight things if I've got like a chart or an infographic. It makes it easier to feature that. Double click and I'm back to my spotlight here. This thing is very advanced. Even though it looks really simple, I can even map the buttons to go to any keystroke on my computer. So what I've done is I've mapped this to basically switch between my screen share mode and my video only mode. Isn't that cool? So I'm literally just holding down my presentation remote to do that. So even though it's a very simple tool, it is very powerful. It runs about $100 US, so it's not inexpensive, but I've had this one for years and it's still going strong, so well worth the investment. Of course, if you're sharing slides, you want your slides to be high impact. So here's a few resources for y'all. The Noun Project is a really great one, and I'm gonna go a little wild here and actually show you. So a live demo is always a little dangerous, but we'll give it a shot. The nounproject.com, and it is this amazing icon library. So if I want to search marketing, I search marketing, and all of a sudden dozens and dozens of different options appear, and I can click on any one of them. Hey, I like that graphic, and I can change the colors, and I can flip between that. I can put in my RGB values for my company's brand. I can download it as a vector file or as a ping raster file. So let me just try another one. I'm gonna say morning because it's bright and early here. And again, you can see all these really neat graphics appear. I love this resource. You can get a free edition or you can have a relatively, I think something like $10 US a month, so pretty cheap. So Noun Project is an amazing resource. I'm also a big fan. If you haven't checked out PowerPoint recently, Design Ideas is an AI that they built into PowerPoint. So it'll actually start auto-suggesting slide layouts to you. It's really powerful and it's gotten a lot better over the years. And then of course, the corporate template, a lot of people think there just has to be this really boring, very stale resource. But we can, there's some really neat things that you can do with a traditional corporate template. So I just wanted to share an example with y'all. This is one that our team created for an event. And you can see this is just standard PowerPoint here. And this is kind of that same template information, but every slide has a bit of dynamicism, a bit of energy to it. And it's still all fully editable. So you can go through this thing, and if I click escape, and I can see all this text is updatable and all these graphics I can swap out, but there's still some dynamicism to a presentation like this. So those are some ways to bring some energy to your slides. I just showed earlier that second webcam technique where I can actually flip between them. So this can just be so great if you're someone who's more tactile, wants to write something out, or have like a second station that's your whiteboard station. It can be really great to create a new dynamic in your meetings. Okay, virtual webcams. This is how I've been creating this custom view within today's broadcast. And so I'll just quickly share what that looks like. And then I want to remind everyone that I'll point you to my YouTube channel in a few minutes where I have a deeper dive. I'm not going to be able to cover this in a ton of depth here, but basically this is a software that's sitting on my machine that's more or less tricking WebEx, Hopin, Zoom, Teams into thinking that this is my webcam when really it's a software that I have control over what I want to do. I'm currently using OBS, Open Broadcaster software. If you're a Mac user, I encourage you to use Ecamm Live. It's really powerful and user-friendly. And there's some other great ones, Logitech Capture, ManyCam. So real quickly, this is what this looks like. I'm gonna go full screen for a moment, and I'll just bring my software on screen so you can see. So this is what OBS looks like. It looks a little intimidating, but here's the deal. So basically, I have my current view. This is what this is. This is within Zoom right now, or sorry, within Hopin right now. And then I have this view that I've got queued up. And so all I have to do is click transition, and I change my view from the meeting, and I click transition back, and I got that other view. And then there's all these different custom views that I can set up. There's really no limit to what I can do here. And these are all editable. I can resize them, I can adjust them, and I've got full control. You see this view here where I actually have both of my webcams going at once. So there's all kinds of options to be creative through this software, and I have full control over that experience. Let me go back to split screen. Excellent. So check these out. And again, check out my YouTube channel if you want a deeper dive on that, because that was a real quick overview there. And then kind of the last thing I want to share for this section is just, your lighting and your microphone can make such a big difference, right? So it's pretty dark out here, right? It is 4:40 a.m. And so watch what happens, y'all, when I turn my lights off. Like, it gets pretty, actually I do have my lights off, so there you go. That's the full experience of how dark it is right now. And so just by having, I'm going to turn these back on, you can see it's a really professional look and feel. And I can give a presentation at 4 a.m., I can give a presentation at 4 p.m., and it still creates that high quality look and feel to my audience. The other thing I want to share is the USB microphone. And by the way, these are the exact models that I have from this image here. The microphone, let's see if I can do this, as I'm not as familiar, but let me see if I can quickly, okay, I can switch. So right now I'm using a dedicated USB microphone. Watch what happens when I switch to my webcam audio. Listen, I guess you can't really watch, but listen to what happens. All right, are you hearing a difference? Yeah. So it's a little bit more tinny, it's a little bit more echoey, and then I'm just going to switch back, and you'll really show the difference. It's a powerful dynamic. So these are relatively inexpensive investments, under $200 for this whole deal. And given how many virtual meetings we all are doing, I believe it's well worth the investment. So with that said, I'm going to just give some closing remarks here, and we will get on to the rest of our morning or afternoon. But in this virtual revolution, I just encourage you to think of this with a growth mentality. This is going to be a skill set that is going to serve you for the rest of your career. You've all heard this phrase so much now, I kind of roll my eyes, but it is the new normal. There's the distractions of working from home. There's distractions of being on our work computers, but there's so much we can do to create awesome experiences for people. We didn't get into planned presence, but things like standing, like I am now, I'm using a standing desk. It's a really great way to really create engaging experiences and to be more, to gesture more and to smile. It just creates a more natural energy versus sitting down and kind of hunched over your computer like this. Making eye contact with the webcam is a really important skill. It's really useful to making it feel like you're looking at the audience versus kind of looking down or to the side. It has a big impact. In dynamic content, we talked about creating a fine dining experience versus a pre-prepared buffet, and really trying to maximize that info exchange between our leaders and our audience. And then in interactive broadcast, we talked about things like the Spotlight remote. Having a second monitor is so important. And having that ability to be able to flip back and forth between them is really useful. Audience participation, things like the chat and the polls that we did today can go such a long way. So like anything, start with a few and pick out a few to start practicing. And then once you're ready for more, you can just go to virtualrevolution.live/PTS, and you can download that cheat sheet. And you can also check out a full replay, including that plan present section that we weren't able to cover today. Check out my YouTube channel. I do deeper dives on a lot of the topics that we discussed today. And please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I post content all the time there. So if you are interested in what my company does, we create event keynotes, interactive sales presentations, corporate templates. And if you like this workshop, just feel free to reach out to me. And this is something that we can bring to your organization. So with that said, you can check me out on LinkedIn, Luke Goetting, or email me, luke@puffingston.com. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. And thank you so much to the Present and Succeed team for this opportunity. Happy virtual presenting, everyone.
Thank you, Luke. That was such a great session and a lot of impressive and quite important tips there. What I took out from this session, and I really loved, you said it at the end, but to look into the session, look into this as an opportunity with an open mindset. So I think that's quite important, especially for people who are now wondering, okay, what should I do now, given that everything is going virtual and I have no other choice? I definitely would recommend you guys following Luke. He has a lot of great content also on his LinkedIn page. We already posted the links to the chat, to your YouTube channel, so that people can join in. Okay, we have our next speaker online, but Verena, can you please give us a second? Yeah, so we can finish up with Luke. So, Luke, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been great having you, and thank you for waking up so early and and being with us. I hope you're going to have a great day, and hopefully you're going to get some sleep first.
I'm going back to bed, so it's been a great day already.
Awesome. Job well done. So we'll be for sure in touch. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, everyone.